Welcome Energy Institute High School teachers. My name is Edgar Contreras, your instructional technologist, and today I'm going to be presenting what is blended learning. Before I begin, I want to give a quick shout out to Screencast-O-Matic. It is a tool that I'm using to record this session. Give it a try. It's a very neat tool. You're going to enjoy it. Right now, blended learning is a trending topic related to changing education. Before we begin with blended learning, though, I want to give a quick kudos to online learning. Programs such as Khan Academy, Scholastic's Read 180 have long since been part of the online or offline computer-based learning in our schools. So, for those of you who were thinking, well, blended learning, so you have computers, you have technology, you have software, that's it, right? That's blended learning. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. Blended learning does have its roots in online learning. Online learning is a disruptive innovation, and it's constantly changing, improving steadily and predictively, where it seeks to serve more demanding users and tougher situations. So for example, let's think about Amazon.com. When it first started, it was serving online consumers, people that were buying things online, offering products. And then later on, they introduced Amazon Prime, which not only did they start offering a larger range of products, they started to offer 2-day shipping and all those other neat features. And then later on, with Amazon Prime streaming video and music, you are now able to watch videos and music that are offered from Amazon through Amazon Prime, similar to like Netflix and those things. So you can see how it started off small and then it started to change into something more to meet the needs of the users. That is a disruptive innovation. Online learning is changing the way we do things. And now with this 101 initiative and online learning getting better and better, we now have what we know as blended learning. So online learning, before it used to be treated as the redheaded stepchild of learning. It was the low-end, second-string alternative to traditional face-to-face classrooms. You might remember it from environments such as credit recovery. In a study that they did in the year 2000 among 40,000 students or so in K through 12 education, they found out that they were using online courses as a last-ditch effort to recover credits in time for graduation, avoid dropping out of school when they were behind, or in some cases they were actually using it for independent study, homeschooling, or distance learning settings. At that time, online learning had little appeal for mainstream students. So then online learning began to become better and better. You had the case here of Rosetta Stone. High Tech High in San Diego, California used Rosetta Stone in their schools to meet the needs of their diverse learners. You had students that wanted to learn different languages, but then the school was struggling to find teachers that could teach those languages or qualified teachers to do so. To quote the CEO of High Tech High in San Diego, he stated that the Rosetta Stone tool was so great that it could actually replace the teacher in some instances. So it was a very neat tool and a very cool use of online learning to meet the needs of the school. So again, as online learning services and programs began to improve, they wanted to improve the learning experience to be a standalone, self-contained course where students can learn anywhere with the use of internet connection and a student's appetite for a fully virtual experience. So online courses began to get better and better. They became better and better. And what was being discovered was that even though these courses were great, there was a limit to the number of students who could work on these programs without the explicit supervision and face-to-face mentoring of an adult. In a study called Disrupting Class, the analysis of the data brought up some very good or interesting points. One of them was that 50% of all high school classes will be delivered online in some form by 2019. If we think about it, we're in 2015 now. Our school has been powered up for the last 3 years, meaning 1-to-1, and it's only natural that we're going to continue to improve on what we do with the technology and the tools that we now have on our campus. For example, right now we're talking about blended learning, which again is something that could not have happened if we hadn't started this big push district-wide. So kudos to the pioneers in our district who set the groundwork for this innovative change in our schools. Another thing that they found out from this study was that homeschooling and full-time virtual schooling will not substitute brick and mortar schooling, as the use of those type of technologies or explicit uses of homeschooling for virtual schooling is right under 10%. So it's a flattened out, where it's going to quickly flatten out at that. What that means is that over 90% of our students will still continue to depend on adult supervision at brick and mortar schools. And lastly, they found out that most children still need a safe place to be during the day while their parents are busy or working. And I don't see that changing either. I want to agree with that. Our society is kind of built around this concept of, parents are working during the day, and the kids, meanwhile, need to be safe and learning, preparing for their futures. That's just the way it's set up right now. And if you think about it, also, our school sort of functions, or one of the main functions of our school is custodial. I mean, one of our main goals, or our first goal, or our first priority, is safety above all else. So we already do that. What blended learning is and isn't. So in mainstream education, when you hear the term blended learning, you might sometimes hear the term being used too broadly or too narrowly. It's kind of suffering from this Goldilocks-like syndrome, where they might be referring to blended learning as all of the educational tools that are being crammed into the classroom at the moment. Or they might be referring to a part or a certain type of blended learning, a certain model that they like best, and saying that that's blended learning, case closed. But there is a little bit more to it than that. So let's look at this diagram of what blended learning is. So blended learning is a formal educational program in which students learn at least in part through online delivery of content and instruction with some elements of student control over time, place, path, and or pace. You see here pictures of computers, touchscreen devices, etc. Plus, you have the picture of the school. And in this case, blended learning is, at least in part, at a supervised brick and mortar location away from home. And finally, blended learning is a shift to online delivery for a portion of the day to make students, teachers, and schools more productive. Learning in multiple modalities yields more and better data that creates an integrated and customizable learning experience. This is a very neat diagram, and you'll see it a lot in blended learning circles. Through tons of research on blended learning, researchers came up with sort of like a checklist or bulleted points that you want to check on to identify the type of modalities that your students are going through as blended learning or not. Again, blended learning is in part through online learning. That's one, check. Blended learning is in part in a supervised brick and mortar location. Check. Blended learning is an integrated learning experience. Check. So those are like the 3 big points. So let's focus on each one individually. Blended learning is any formal education program in which a student learns at least in part through online learning with some element of student control over time, place, path, and or pace. I want to point out some things. Right now, you're watching this video. It's over a presentation on blended learning, of what is blended learning. And there are students at this point in time that are actually receiving the same information, but in a face-to-face teacher traditional environment. So there you have students who have control over the path and or pace, time, and place. And to further show that, I hope you notice that on the right-hand side of this YouTube video, there's a little gear. And in that gear on the right-hand side, you can control the pace of this presentation. So you can make my voice speed up or slow down. You can pause, you can rewind, you can watch this later, you can show it to friends, etc. Right? And lastly, online learning in this definition means a bigger instructional shift from a face-to-face teacher to web-based content and instruction. Again, you got to let that sink in a little bit, but it's very cool. Blended learning is in part in a supervised brick-and-mortar location. Like we said before, the students need a place or an environment that's safe and a place where they can learn. Well, in blended learning, the student learns at least in part in a supervised brick-and-mortar location away from home. I'm sorry, but if you're thinking a brick-and-mortar location away from home is like Starbucks or the grocery store, I apologize, but the Starbucks barista does not count. We need amazing teachers just like you to make sure that students are learning with fidelity, checking for understanding, tracking their data, and then modifying your lessons to meet the needs of these students. Now, blended learning is an integrated learning experience. The modalities along each student's learning path within a course or subject are connected to provide an integrated learning experience. What this means is that if students are learning U.S. history in a blended way, the online and face-to-face components work together to deliver an integrated course. The opposite of this would be that students learn some topics online and return to their traditional classroom to repeat them in a face-to-face lecture. Thank you for watching this video. Now you're going to take a quiz to check for your understanding of what blended learning is.